Welcome to episode 164 of A Pint with Seaniebee. This is the US election special part 3. We were wondering whether we would be able to squeeze 3 podcasts out in the run-up to the forthcoming US general election. We are 3 or 4 days out, depending on your time zone, from said election, and the plot keeps getting thicker and thicker, and almost as if it has been written by someone like Sorkin or one of those other West Wing type people. The thing is gone crazy. Luckily, someone who hasn't gone crazy is the Don. She's with me as ever. How are you?
How's your Maz, your dad working?
They're both retired.
I know.
We have gone into lockdown in Dublin, in Ireland, again. What to say about that, I don't know, except that all over Europe, the COVID pandemic is flaring up again, big style.
Held on now, because lockdown has lost all meaning. It's just a word we fuck around like confetti at a wedding. Right, quick one. In Ireland, they introduced a level system, 1 to 5, and it took them months and months to come up with this shit. The notable thing being, like, level 1 is kind of, we're managing, a lot of stuff is open. Level 5 is
1 is, you're grand.
You're grand. Level 5 is now, lads, come on now. So, but the funniest part is it took them so long to come up with this intricate level system, and never once have they stuck to a level. Never once have they gone, yeah, we're on level 2. It's always been 2 and a bit or 3 minus a bit, and it's like 4 with a twist. So what we're at is level 5, which should be the full tilt, which is why people say lockdown. However, what that is now in Ireland is schools are open, everything else is shut. You're supposed to be at home if you're not an essential worker, but an awful lot of every company is now going, oh, well, we're essential and here's why. So we're 2 weeks into a 6-week lockdown, if you will, and we're now in the midst of, you know, the big German supermarkets, which most countries will have, like Aldi and Lidl. They're just bargain supermarkets. They always have the middle aisles, like you can buy a chainsaw or skis or like a knitting set. And so now there's been so much upset that like all the shops have to close because they're not essential. And then so some of the bigger chains like Dunnes Stores is a supermarket, but they also have clothing and like homewares. So they're like, well, we're allowed to open. And then the smaller shops go, well, how come they can sell baby clothes but we can't, and they can sell shoes but we can't? So they're like a big retailer and we're a small family business and we're being crushed yet again. So then the government's had to go, no non-essential items. So now even supermarkets that are bargain supermarkets that happen to have like baby socks in the background go, no, you can't sell them. So there's uproar about that. It's very funny watching the government try and manage.
It's amazing how much greed really is at the lingering and lurking behind the scenes in all of this, because there are a lot of people out there who are going, you know, we have to move towards zero virus, which is very difficult to do, very difficult to do for us. But some countries have done it. New Zealand have done it. Australia are pretty good at the moment. And South Korea and places like that, Singapore. So, you know, it is possible, but behind the scenes, it's like, I want to buy things, I want to go out, I want to see people, and I get that it's painful, but we have everything.
Well, I suppose the argument for us, which, I mean, I suppose I'd have to agree with this, it's not an option for us because we share a land border with Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK. So, obviously, it's different jurisdiction. We don't have a hard border, which is a massive thing of Brexit. So, it's not realistic to say we're going to have a zero COVID thing, but up the north, they have their own government, but they don't control the purse strings. So the government in the north could say, look, we need to introduce lockdown, we're doing a whole island approach, and if you can see in the south they're doing this and this is what we need to do because our numbers are like that, but the purse strings are in London and they're going, fuck off. So you can't introduce a full lockdown if you haven't got the money for the pandemic payments and all that kind of stuff, which they have gotten in the past few weeks, but not to any great extent. So the point being that even if the government in the south work with the government in the north, it's just not a viable option to try and aim for a zero COVID island.
Of course, those overseas listeners will know that Northern Ireland is part of Great Britain, and we're from the south, which is causing a few problems given the traffic that goes between the two countries. And we have got we have a social bubble going. That's why the Don is in the house tonight. So I have had to take a couple of weeks out for quarantining. I had will I tell the story of
how? Go on.
I was actually going to look at an apartment about 3 weeks ago in
Fla.
Yeah, Fla, over near Heuston Station, which is the biggest train station in Dublin. And I was there early and they couldn't see me because it was all done in a booking scheme. And so I had an hour to kill. So I went up to the nearest hotel. There was a Hilton out near Kilmainham, those of you who know the area. So I went in there and had some lunch. It was salad. I was off the booze, remember? We're back on the booze now, by the way. We'll come to that. And you know that bit where you kind of, some people, I'm not sure everyone listening, but you have that sort of, just before you leave home or you leave a restaurant, or it's probably instilled in us since we were kids.
What I do is go into the toilet now
do I need to go to the loo? And I'm going, I'm grand. And you have a little think and you go, I'll be fine. Everything seems to be in order. And so I trundled down the hill to these apartments I was looking at. And by the time I got to the apartments, it was like, I could probably do with one. I'm not desperately desperate for the bathroom, but so it was a posh kind of apartment complex. And I said, do you have a bathroom? And I thought, get it out of the way while I'm waiting for the person to come show me. Oh no, we don't have any bathrooms. And I'm kind of going, well, that's pretty...
Please come and live here.
I'll definitely not be coming to live here. So I looked at the apartments, and then I had to walk back to Houston Station. Of course, like all these apartment blocks, they always say, right beside Houston. It's about a mile away. By the time I'd walked down to Houston Station, let's just say the lunch was everything was just jiggling and jaggling, and I really needed to go to a number 2.
Had things moved along.
I needed to do a poo. And the only option open to me was Houston Station, which is manky. Anyone listening to this, just think of your biggest train station, think of the bathrooms, they're usually shit. So I said to myself, I wouldn't be able to get a cab because I probably just stopped the cab. So it was now getting a bit urgent. So I go into the Houston Station bathrooms where everyone since Wolf Tone has had a shit in there, right? It's been the amount of poos that have gone into that is probably per capita in Dublin. It's the biggest poo bathroom. So I go in there and there's all the cubicles are full except for one, and I'm now sort of, the way that other bit where you're ready to go and you kind of relax a bit and you go, oh no, so there was no lock on the door, so I was jamming the door over my foot, and I had my mask on,
willing your sphincter to let go.
I was putting down paper on the toilet.
Did it all fly away when you went to sit on it?
No, to remove any latent Daniel O'Connell shit stickles that might have been still there from when he did a poo there back in the day. And anyway, and then I'm just about to go, and the best way to describe this is, the White House Time magazine cover with COVID coming out of the top of the White House.
Oh, like the giant particle.
No, it was just like, it was spraying out of the sky. Yeah. It was like that. The guy in the cubicle next to me didn't see him. He sounded very old, and he started coughing like his fucking life depended on it. He was trying to cough himself inside out, and it was wet, horrible coughing, and I'm there trying to do a poo quickly, and I'm sweating, and I'm getting all freaked out, and I'm thinking I'm getting COVID, and I'm trying to go, God, this is like, it was like...
One foot holding the stall door closed, and the other just kind of go
every time I let the door go, the wind would blow it in, and I'd be, Anyway, I got out of there, wiped my hands, and I was sweating like I was a mess, and I thought I've definitely caught COVID. Needless to say, I'm not taking the apartment, but I got home, and then a couple of days later, 4 days later, I was laid up with extreme lethargy now, or lethargy. Is it lethargy or lethargy?
Lethargy.
Lethargy. Yeah.
I'd say RTE probably says lethargy.
I had extreme lethargy, and so I'm sitting there in bed. I can't move, and I don't have any cough, thankfully. I don't have any fever. A couple of times, a bit of fever, and I have my sense of smell and my sense of taste. But we decided, being upstanding citizens, that I would go into quarantine for 14 days, which I did, and appear to be okay now. But that brought up a lot of interesting discussions.
Well, to clarify on that, so this was just the incident occurred on a Thursday. And I was chatting to you on Thursday evening. I'd had a shit day myself, and I realised you had a worse one. And I was due to come over on the Friday. I'd usually come over on a Friday. And you were still telling me, like, Jesus, I'm kind of paranoid. So Sean's been really good, and, like, not that you've been health anxiety about it, but I suppose you're not out every day working, so you're kind of in a position to be careful, and you'd be a sort of an upstanding person anyway, so you've been quite careful and cautious without being paranoid. So this probably got you because you haven't been out in the world, and you were like, oh, and you're having a rough day anyway, so you weren't in the best form. So I came over and you're a bit paranoid, and on the Saturday you're like, I feel a bit lethargic, and I was like, yeah, but we've been off the booze for a month, and now we got hammered last night, so you may in fact be hungover. And you were like, okay, grand. It's fine, it's just, I'm just getting paranoid, or actually just hungover. But come Monday, I've gone home, and you're like, don't feel well at all. Tuesday, don't feel well at all. So from my perspective, I'm going, okay, I wasn't there. Sounds like I wouldn't best be pleased myself if I'm in a trapped, confined space with someone who's hacking their guts up and I'm going, oh, Jesus. But I'm also like, you see, we're in a pandemic, and even if you're not a nervy sort of person, paranoia sets in. I'm sorry, if you have no paranoia in this pandemic, you're not awake at all. Like, it's just perfectly natural. Like, you don't have kids, but I have kids. As soon as somebody says something about there's a case of lice in the school, no sooner you see the word lice, your skin is crawling and you're convinced you have it. Your child hasn't even come home from school yet, and it's not even in your class. And I'm kind of going, this applies to the pandemic. The minute someone fucking sneezes, you're going, I can't breathe.
Yeah, it was the day before we went back on the booze officially, and we did the full time off the booze, which was good, and luckily we did it before the lockdown. But anyway, it seems that like I don't have COVID, and I didn't get tested because I was sort of going, well, I'm in my own apartment, I'm not going to go out anywhere, I'm going to just stay in the apartment, which I did for 14 days, except to go heavily masked to buy some groceries one day, late on when I knew that I was okay. And it sort of begged the question, like I was kind of worried that if I hadn't got it, which I didn't feel like I had it, that I'd probably catch it at the testing station.
Well, this is the thing, because you're paranoid going, I haven't got it, I don't feel well, there's nothing wrong, but I'm not developing a cough, but I don't feel well.
Yeah, I had something.
But I know I'm being sick, I haven't got it. I know, but I can't chance it, I better quarantine because I'm not grand and I couldn't live with myself. And like, I'm going home to my kids and to my mum who'd be in her 60s, and she's cancer, she's diabetic. So like, I mean, she's out working, but like, you imagine if you had it and you'd pass it on to my mum, you'd be disgusted. So you're kind of going, I know we have to do the right thing. But at the same time, well, surely at this stage now, it's been a week, it's been 2 weeks, I haven't seen the Don, I haven't, maybe I should just get tested now. But you're also going, yeah, but I probably haven't got it. I don't really want to go down to COVID fucking Central down the road to get tested and pick it up there.
Exactly.
So that's the thing that no one talks about.
Go, well, how many people are like me, who aren't working, so obviously don't want to go to work with it.
But I'm sat there going, if it was me, I'd be like, oh, I can't live in quarantine the whole time. I better just find out. But I'm also going, look, if I have it, I'm not gravely ill, I'm not worried about my well-being, so I'll just stay put. And if I go down and get it, then I'm mixing with all the lepers down there. So like, it leaves you in that is the human thing of going, well, I don't actually have somewhere to be, I'd rather just stay put. But then that drives you insane.
Anyway, our COVID thing has gone off the scale in terms of numbers of people catching it. Deaths, of course, are lower. Medication is helping people. Medicine has worked out how to handle this disease a lot more than it did back in the first outbreak. And we're recording it on the day when Donald Trump Jr. says that in America, coronavirus has gone away and is almost down to nothing. That is the day that they crossed the 9 million threshold. They put on 80,000 new cases in one day, the highest ever. As we're talking, they're probably breasting the tape of 230,000 Americans dead. We're here to talk about the election on Tuesday. This is late Friday night. What do you think is going to happen?
Right. So we keep doing this every couple of days. Going, what do you think is going to happen? I don't know. Obviously, I want Biden to win. I don't want Trump to win. My prediction is, if I was to put money on it, I'd be putting money on Biden, I think. But I also don't for a minute think, Biden's definitely going to win.
I have a few bob riding on him, Biden. We have a situation, though, which is quite interesting in the sense that, actually, I want to play this idea of leadership. And Donald Trump could be a shoo-in, in my opinion, for the presidency if he had treated the coronavirus with respect and led the country through it. If you have a very, very crude analogy of those of you who are still thinking it's just like a flu, there are 230,000 deaths. That's about 4 Gillette Foxborough stadiums full of dead people. The normal flu would be less than half a stadium on a bad year. But the thing about Trump and America is they can't hide because so many other countries can look at each other and see what happens. It's the same virus everywhere, give or take a strain or two. So on the 17th of March, we just had a general election when this thing all blew up, as those regular listeners will know. And our Prime Minister, our Taoiseach, at the time was a caretaker Taoiseach until the new government was found. And he came out with this.
Is the calm before the storm, before the surge. And when it comes, and it will come, never will so many ask so much of so few. We'll do all that we can to support them. We all need to take steps to reduce close human contact. That's how the virus is spread. Not just at public gatherings or in public places, but also in our own homes, places of leisure and places of work. Large public gatherings are cancelled. All pubs and bars are shut. And we've asked people to curtail or cancel social gatherings, like parties, weddings and other celebrations. I know these choices won't be easy, but they are necessary. For those who lost their jobs and had their incomes reduced, there will be help and understanding from those who can give it, particularly the banks, government bodies and utilities. Many of you want to know when this will be over. The truth is, we just don't know yet. This emergency is likely to go on well beyond March 29th. It could go on for months into the summer, so we need to be sensible in the approaches we take. It will mean avoiding unnecessary journeys, shopping online from local businesses, and getting things delivered rather than physically going to the premises. In short, we're asking people to come together as a nation by staying apart from each other. Tonight I know many of you are feeling scared and overwhelmed. That's a normal reaction, but we will get through this and we will prevail. Tonight, on our national holiday, I want to send a message around the world. We are in this together. To the people of China, Spain and Italy, who've suffered untold heartbreak and loss, we are with you. To everyone who's lost a loved one to this virus, we are with you. To all those living in the shadow of what is to come, we are with you.
That was our Taoiseach Leo Varadkar at the time. He's no Jacinda Ardern by any means. He is a doctor by trade or practice. But the point I'm making, Don, is if Donald Trump had come out and done a speech of the nations, we all remember where we were when we heard that. It wasn't that serious at the time.
Jesus.
We were going, fuck hell.
Just for anyone who missed it, you mentioned it was 17th of March, and Leo Varadkar in his speech there mentioned our public holiday. So that's 17th of March is St. Patrick's Day. So it was kind of a thing. And it just kind of added to the drama of it. And as I'm listening to that, all that comes into my head is Blinding Lights, the song by The Weeknd, because that was the song that got all of the old people on TikTok, including me. And so when I hear flashback, I'm getting flashbacks, I'm actually getting PTSD, and the soundtrack of it is do, 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 do. But yeah, I am not, I'm never going to be wetting my knickers for Leo Varadkar, he's a dickhead. But Donald Trump, and I think pretty much any world leader, I kind of had a choice at the time, which is, this is really serious, that's all pulled together, or are you going to go, this is ridiculous, yeah, whatever. Now, if you take the minimising approach, then new facts will come to light, new shit has come to light, but there's always going to be the cognitive dissonance of you're going, yeah, okay, fair enough, but, you're always going to be spinning it because the cognitive dissonance is that you're on the side of, let's not take this too seriously, economy first, yada yada, people are overblowing this. It doesn't mean you're going to tell lies, but no matter what happens, you're going to have this cognitive dissonance always leading you to this narrative that it's not that serious. And if you take the thing of we have to do the right thing, then no matter how much it eases, you're kind of going to be led to acknowledge things have gotten better, however, therefore, we have to still stick to this. So I think you pick your narrative, you're kind of painting your colours to the mast. So when you said that to me, you said it to me actually yesterday, the day before, and I remember thinking, yeah, there are in-between approaches, but essentially, are you voting for or against? And he picked the fucking wrong one, particularly being the Republican person, and considering his base, because, yes, I know there are Karens and they're like, my freedom and my rights, and he made masks essentially guns in the narrative. However, it blew up in his face. Overall, he's lost certainly a lot of older voters based on his handling of coronavirus. There are certain Trumpsters that are, no matter what he does, they're going to go, yeah. And if had he said wear masks, and the human correct thing to do would have been from the start, take it seriously and tell everyone the patriotic thing to do is to wear a mask and have them all wearing MAGA masks. But he chose the wrong fucking path. Now, considering his particular fan base, had he done like what Leo Varadkar has done there, and bearing in mind he's a pretty conservative leader in Ireland, but it'd be neoliberalism, it'd be nationalism is not their flavour. So the patriotic shit could be seen as somewhat cheesy and corny. So that's not his flavour, and he's gone patriotic. Now, if you imagine if you're Donald Trump and you've chosen, right, I'm going to choose my narrative, I'm on this side and I want to get everybody on board, he could have gone fucking full on. The Americans can be very patriotic. He could have really lit up the nationalism, the fan base. USA, Star-Spangled face masks, all that jazz. And he would have had all these opportunities to be continually patriotic and calling on American men and women and children to look after their neighbour and look after their country, and that they're heroes if they do the right thing and by staying home. He could have done that and it would have been so much easier, and it was a bit of a fucking own goal that he picked the wrong side.
Well, they like nothing more than a war, and George Bush's second term was basically, 9/11 driven. So if 9/11 hadn't happened, he would have been out because he was just, he was a dope. But, I mean, we'd all love to have him back in power, I'd say. But he kept going on about the fact that he stopped flights from China, where it was clear that most of the infection came into America via New York and New Jersey from Europe. So he missed that boat.
But, sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm trying to find the correct fact here. But I remember kind of looking into this recently, and he didn't actually stop all the flights from China. So,
No,
the people that you want from China were still allowed to float right in from the country. And if it's not a racial issue, you go, listen, if it's closed the borders, it's closed the borders because it's a pandemic and we don't want anything, like we're closed, quarantine, we're closing the borders. But I think a shitload of people were still let come in.
Yeah.
But just not the Chinese.
He had an interview with Bob Woodward. Ironically, Bob Woodward, who was the guy who exposed Nixon and the Watergate thing, still alive, an old man now. But, that came out about 3 months ago, that he was talking to him in February. He knew exactly how bad it was. He knew about it, and he decided, I'm not going to panic the people. I'm going...
Or the markets.
Exactly. He doesn't mean the people, he means the markets. I'm not going to spook things. He knew all of these things were happening. If he had gone and done what... And like Boris Johnson is a good example of someone who bumbled his way and is now, course corrected, but like he was bumbling his way through February.
He picked the wrong team too, but he realised a couple of weeks in, fuck, I picked the wrong side here.
Yeah.
How do I backstep without looking like...
And so we're still, by all accounts, so close in this race that if he had led his country with the patriotism and unifying people together instead of this division that he seems to gloat over, he would be being elected right now. So the best thing the coronavirus has done, in my view, is it is highly likely the coronavirus is going to be the reason Donald and his response.
Yeah, I mean, here's it. Like, we actually don't know how close it is. That's I think the constant thing, because we're watching it fairly. We don't actually. No one knows how close it is. It could be quite close, or it could be a landslide, and we just don't fucking know. It's just impossible to measure. But
I'm predicting that there's going to be a landslide. I think that landslide is a strong term, but I think newspapers around the world will use the word landslide.
But I think we're looking at it right now going, it's close because we're not all that happily confident that he's out.
Well, I think the lesson from 16.
Yeah, exactly.
The polls were wrong, very badly wrong.
But we don't know if it's close. It's just that, any of the political pundits are kind of going, it could go either way. They're still going, it's looking better for Biden, but it could go either way. I think nobody wants to say. But the reality is, what could come to light in a week's time is that it's an absolute landslide and Biden had it by a mile. That could easily come to light, but for right now, we're not confident of that.
And more people in Texas have voted early, information out tonight, than voted on the day in the whole of Texas the last time. And you have to say, why do people come out to vote early? Okay, so on the one hand, there's a lot of Trump fans out there who are going, I'm going to go out and support my president. They're also more gung-ho. They don't believe in social distancing. They don't believe in all this. I'm generalising, of course.
Well, no.
But the reason more people are coming out early is, I think, they're fed up with this fucking Egypt and they're going to make their vote count this time. It's going to be the biggest vote probably in over 100 years.
Look, when I see early voters, I'm kind of going, probably Biden voters. On the one hand, you've got the gung-ho Trumpsters, but they were coming out to vote anyway. So if you look at who undervoted, who were dissuaded from voting last time, people of colour, basically people who would not be likely to vote for Trump were dissuaded from voting last time. So who's coming out now? And then you also go, Trump has entirely, for the past couple of months, been going on about postal votes and trying to discredit them in advance because he knows they're not going to be in his favour. So when I see postal voting, when I see early voting, it just reeks of Democrat, and plenty of people have voted for Trump that have voted early. But generally speaking, it kind of seems like more of a Biden vote when they're coming out early. Then it suggests, Jesus, we might be in for a landslide.
Maybe. I had my first brush with a Trump supporter on Twitter. A woman, I'll mention her name, even though she doesn't know she's going to be on the show. Her name is Pamela Pesta, and she's actually written a book called Letting Go of the Thief, a 90-day journey into the chattering mind of an alcoholic. And she came to me on Twitter via our alcoholism podcast 3 episodes back, where we were talking about that in Craig Smith's one. And it was just interesting to hear the mind of someone. Now, she's very polite, very nice, friendly. And she said, I'll read some of the stuff. She said, "Have you researched all of my president's accomplishments? He has created the best employment for minorities ever. His prison reform bill has helped those placed in jail due to unfair practices. He's absolutely right in immigration. We can't afford to just let people in there. Just let people in. There has to be a system. My grandparents would be an example of entering legally. The Pravda media," it's a sure sign that she's a big Fox News. Ironically, the Fox News crew, who are almost like the Pravda media, keep calling all the other media the Pravda media, never shows his kind side. Apparently Donald Trump has a kind side. I could go on. "Joe is corrupt. Are you refusing to look into his 47 years in politics? Perhaps you have met your first Trump supporter."
Oh, she is going to go on. Okay.
"No, I am not racist nor any other name. The blue side likes to call out. In this election, you are either voting Democrat or American in capitals. P.S.
Did she do the shouty boomer capitals?
P.S. My father is Irish. You have a lovely country. Hope you understand. Blessings." So I wrote back a long thing to her, and she says, "Wow, your perspective is so different than mine. Are you a proponent of Black Lives Matter, who destroyed innocent businesses and murdered police? Did you ask the question as to who pays for that in the end? Did you see the looting? One for you, Don. What about abortion? Joe is pro-abortion even after the baby is delivered."
Oh my God, after the baby's delivered? Yeah. They're the worst abortions.
3 states have made that available. President Trump believes all life is sacred. Did you hear about Joe's oil? Hopefully Pennsylvania, Ohio and Texas heard that. Big job losses coming. Also Joe's senility, which is sadly ignored. Look into Miss Harris too. I could go on. Were you
she
pro-Hillary?
Keeps saying she could go on and then she goes on.
Now there's a list of corruption and death. Her husband also has a laundry list of female accusers, always ignored by the media. I do wish my president would stop tweeting. I agree on how it looks unstatesmanlike. However, Obama could say whatever he wanted and hid behind his half-black rhetoric, which made him untouchable.
Not racist
By the
at
way,
all, though.
The Democrats no longer own the black vote. That's completely changing. Just watch. God bless President Trump. I do love a good debate. Hope you're not offended. Blessings. And I said, no offence taken. And fair play to her. She
that is the most fucking Seppo thing I've ever heard.
But we're in this situation where that's the belief.
But what's funny is, like, this is a person who views themselves, because she's written a book, she views herself as an academic. She views herself as the more respectable side, saying...
I don't think it's to do with that. I think
no, but I mean, like, she's put forward, look, I do wish my president would stop tweeting. Now, I mean, I could understand someone going, look, I wish he'd stop tweeting. I understand sometimes he's not the most statesman-like, and I'd prefer that. But here, I agree with him on these policies. You know, in theory, I'd go, I respect your point. But I'm also going, as someone who's essentially putting yourself forward as the responsible, reasonable voice and acknowledging, look, sometimes he can be a bit brash, but I think this is being ignored. She's hit every single fucking milestone along the way of, I'm not racist, but I'm going to say a shitload of racist stuff here. I'm going to do the whole boomer capitals thing. I'm going to put out flash words. I'm going to ask you your opinion while telling you what your opinion means. No, I'm just saying it's an example, though.
She's just articulating, probably because she's a writer, she's able to articulate in writing. You know, I have no concept of his accomplishments. He talks about a new Care Act that he hasn't even showed up.
Here's the thing, like, we consistently... like. The idea that, I mean, imagine if you had said, right, this election is about empathy, it's about intelligence, and somebody else had gone, you know what, no,
it's racism,
about...
actually.
No, but imagine if somebody had said this is about facts. I would say, no, it's not, because there are no facts, because Donald Trump continually puts out facts, which, I mean, if you take, for instance, Barack Obama was speaking in Florida, I believe, a couple of days ago, and he was putting out some numbers and going, you can Google that, you can check that, here are the numbers. Trump claims this, when in actual fact, he inherited the best economy, he inherited the highest growth in jobs, and in the 3 years since he became president, which excludes the pandemic, so that takes that out of the equation, he messed it up. And those facts were verified and checked. And you're going, okay, but this completely goes against what Donald Trump says. But then again, Donald Trump just shits out whatever rhetoric he wants. And when you go and fact check those, you go, well, everyone's just saying what they want, and so it's just up to me who I like to listen to. But I've checked what Barack Obama said, and that's actually accurate. There are figures that you can check. I've checked what Donald Trump has said. Not getting any back.
Well, they both lie. I mean, like...
I think narrative lies.
The whole idea, I think, is correct that the American political system is fucked.
Oh, it is. And
has been fucked for 25 years, 30 years.
But I think the point being, narrative lies all the time. But on the idea that, like, you consistently hear, well, like, facts don't care what your feelings think. and that here are the facts, and people don't like Donald Trump, they think he's a bad guy, but you know, he did this, he did this, he did this, no one talks about that, and you go, well, I've looked that up and actually that's not true.
Yeah, he
I've looked it up and I fact checked it and actually that's not accurate.
Yeah, he clearly hasn't done a lot of things that he says he has. It's more about the blind faith, and Fintan O'Toole, one of our respected journalists, who doesn't work for CNN or for Fox News or whatever, he's a respected, award-winning journalist in an Irish newspaper who's also analysing what's going on over in America. And he made the point that it's this demagoguery. So this idea that you put yourself on a plinth. And he talked about basically Donald Trump's pitch is, I'm alive. And he has a biblical approach. I caught the virus.
Rose again.
I rose again on the third day. We talked about this last time.
Yeah.
And then he has a scientific approach. And his scientific approach is, I'm immune. And if our dear leader is healthy, alive, waving at us from the balcony of the White House, saying things are going to be okay, then we all believe him and we all row around him. And it's just deeply, deeply
Yeah, but
disturbing.
I also think it's epically timed in terms of the problem with populism, and not just right-wing populism, but like the way the world is going, like when things are so deeply impacted by social media and the internet, and how much we can, even if you actively try not to do the echo chamber thing, you look at how the suggestions and what comes onto your news feed are affected. You don't have a choice. You're going to live in some element of an echo chamber, and that is the impact that the internet and social media has had. Now, I remember talking about 5-6 years ago about how I was interested to see how it's going to play out, and a lot of people were giving out about social media and the effects it's having, and I thought, okay, but it's the town square. So what's interesting is that people who have never been invited to have a seat at the table are now going to be given an opinion, where it was just for educated people, for people who read the papers every day, and I mean broadsheet, not tabloid. Now everyone's going to have an opinion. Everybody has a soapbox. That's quite interesting. That's going to be massively changing for democracy. I'm excited to see where this goes, and now I'm going, oh fuck. And this brings you back to the ancient Greek thing of, is democracy really a good idea? Because that means every dickhead gets a voice. Some people are not that well informed, and this sudden surge of...
But just let me stop you there. I mean, that's the problem. Everyone doesn't have an opinion. Everyone uses...
Everyone has an opinion. It's just some of them are shit, and some of them are ill-informed.
No one is... The amount of people who are engaged in social media on politics and news is tiny.
No, but here's...
TikTok dances.
I think a shitload of people have opinions and put out opinions, however much they actually invest in how well formed those opinions are a different thing. Have they earned the right to air those opinions? But we now have a system which is much more democratic, that everybody gets a soapbox, everyone gets to spout their shit, and algorithms will decide how much they're going to be, and that's based on advertising. What's going to make money? It's based on clicks. So everybody, basically there is the meritocracy thing has kind of died away to an extent. And on the one hand, you go, okay, that's a big blow to elitism, where people who haven't gone to university and don't have 6 degrees in psychology and politics and law degree, but other people who go, well, I've lived life and I'm intelligent, now I'm allowed to have a voice. And that seems great from like a worker's point of view in theory. But what it ends up being is people who've got 6 degrees off Facebook and they got their PhD on Twitter, and now they're going, well, I know your scientist said that, but there were too many big words in that and I didn't like that and it didn't suit me. So now I'm going to say this thing that I learned on a YouTube video and I'm going to dig my heels in. And I think that was what started to happen around the time that Donald Trump, like, phones had the internet 10 years ago, but like we did it on the laptop. It was on my phone, but you didn't use things on your phone. Smartphones weren't that much of a thing. And since then, now everything's on your phone. That changes us massively as people. That changes how we live and how we consume information and how we interact with each other. And so kind of halfway through that point from 2010 to 2020 is around the time when Donald Trump's being elected, and we're kind of going, oh, okay, now everybody's online and it's in their pockets, and we're now all kind of tweeting from our pockets, and this is new. Everyone has a voice. Quite democratic. This is going to rock the system. And now we're at 2020 going, yeah, but every fucking dickhead who didn't bother to read a book, their voices are being amplified as much as those who actually informed themselves. And that brings around the philosophical idea of, yeah, but I don't want elitism, but what about meritocracy? Do we want every fucking idiot who wants to make a point to be heard as loudly? And how do we differentiate between every taxi driver spouting his shite and somebody who's actually a world-renowned scholar in a particular... I mean, who are we going to listen to? Are we going to give weight to these opinions? And I think that has really muddied the waters. With Donald Trump, if you've if you suddenly enjoyed having a platform where you never did, and you're allowed to spout your opinions, and you were never anybody important, no one was ever going to hand you a microphone and ask you what you think, but suddenly you get to say what you think. You can't really hold your own in academic circles. That makes you feel bad. But there's certain little small circles in the village square where people go, fucking dead right, you're speaking sense, you're saying it as it is, and you go, oh, thanks, great. So you can see how people get sucked into the kind of knuckle-dragging, far-right, simplistic, incendiary politics. But once you've painted your colours to the mast, then no matter how... And I think that's where you start in 2016, where people are going, that's attractive to people who feel accepted and who don't feel excluded because they're not academic enough. And I think there is this kind of bourgeois problem where people felt excluded from, if you look at America, the Democrat politics. I'm not educated enough. I'm not worthy of a platform there, but every man has a voice when it comes to Donald Trump's thing. I matter. I'm saying it as it is. And I think that drew people in. But then once you start putting your Trump flags outside and fighting people on it, 2-3 years later when you're going, fuck no, this chap is terrible, the cognitive dissonance sets in because you've made it your business. You've painted it in blood. I'm on this side, and you'll do anything to defend it. And I think that's why the worse he gets, no matter what he does, people who are on his side can't bear, because the tribalism has set in so much. But I do think the reason that people settled in his tribe was because they felt worthy in his tribe.
Then you have to start thinking he's a bit of a genius. Because one of the things he does every night, I mean, we watch it every night, he runs to the news cycle and he puts out words and he says things in a way that he knows is going to rile people up. He knows it's going to rile the intelligent people up on a how dare you say that, you unstatesmanlike wanker. And he knows that even them getting riled up is going to play to his base. It's going to USA his base and his rallies. You know, he's doing 17 rallies over the next 4 days, none socially distanced, none with masks, the majority of which have done with masks. And you have to say, well, maybe the guy's actually a fucking genius.
I certainly don't think he's a genius. What I think he is intuitive.
Yeah.
I think he probably hasn't worked out exactly why he does what he does. I think he's arrogant. I think he's a megalomaniac. I think he's a fucking idiot. However, I do think he's intuitive enough to kind of tune in, to know he has a feel for what works. And I don't, and like, maybe I'm being arrogant saying this, but I do strongly feel this is how and why people have gone to his side. Not just him and other leaders like him, but I think it is this disempowered, often emasculated person who feels that they're not welcome at the table of academics, and suddenly they get a voice and they feel important, and they stick to the club that makes them feel big. And that's how he got his voters. And now a couple of years along the line, he can push it even further because people won't back down after. Nobody wants to feel stupid. I don't think he fully gets it. I don't think he's in any way a genius, but I think he's intuitive enough to know. He knows when he's putting something out that's going to be incendiary. He's like, yeah, fuck the Liberals. This is going to get them going. I think it's intuitive, but it's still there.
You know, there's talk of a huge number, we didn't talk about this earlier, of people who, and I think I know a few, who are intelligent and are smart and are educated, who are secretly voting.
Selfish people.
And I think it does come down to greed. It comes down to the failed experiment that is vastly becoming apparent in the United States of America, where all of those great promises in the Constitution about bring me your poor and bring me your weak and freedom, liberty to do whatever you want, that's actually not true.
But there is this thing, I'd well believe it's never discussed, and you talk about it, how many people know he's a dickhead? No, it's probably not the right thing, however, it serves their interests. So whilst they wouldn't ever be caught putting up a Trump sign in their front yard or wearing a Trump badge, and they might not say they're voting for Trump at a dinner party, they might go, fuck, I might vote for Trump because it would suit my taxes.
Yeah, or, as we said the last time, we had a ridiculous amount of Catholics are voting for him, even though Joe Biden is a Catholic. Which brings us on to they just brushed in that new Supreme Court Justice.
Yeah, we talked about Amy Coney Barrett. She's in there now. Deed is done.
The sisterhood have had a corollary problem in Poland. Yeah,
so we're doing a bit of a side note. I don't think we can pass this week without making note of what's going on in Poland. I think this is interesting because I see, obviously there are huge parallels with Ireland, but I'm seeing parallels with the USA. So basically in Poland, the abortion laws were some of the strictest in Europe since 1993. There were 3 grounds for abortion. 1 was in the case of rape or incest. 2 was in the case of a threat to the health or life of the mother, and 3 was in the case of congenital defect. And so long and short of this bill is that number 3 has been removed. So there's no such thing as abortion for that now. And bear in mind, 98% of abortions in Poland went through based on number 3, which was congenital defects. So that's essentially abortion has been outlawed in Poland. Why it's interesting when you compare it to the US situation is that they had tried to do this through the parliament a couple of times, but the Polish women just got out in force and protested, and parliament were not fucking with them. They set up a commission in 2016, and what happened was there's a far-right party in Poland, which is the PIS, I think, and they started to stack the commission. So immediately I'm thinking of the courts being stacked. And they tried a few times, and what's happened now is because the commission's been stacked with PIS members, which are far right, the commission found that it's unconstitutional, so therefore number 3, which again is the congenital defect thing, has been removed. And it bypassed Parliament. So the women have been out in force for the past week or so, massive protests. And the Polish president, which is Andrzej Duda, who would be aligned to PIS, he had come out kind of saying, I'm gonna sign this into legislation. But after the week, he's kind of done a U-turn and said, well, I actually support number 3, and I think that it's terrible to expect women to go through this. But he hasn't said.
Well, I think the point is that the Poles have been on the naughty step in Europe for years now. They've been riding roughshod over their judiciary. Guess what's happening in America? Donald Trump is riding roughshod over the judiciary.
But the bottom line is that it's become quite far right, and I mean, in this instance, what's come out in the past couple of days is the most powerful man in Poland, who's I think he's actually the
Prime Minister.
I think he's actually the Vice Prime Minister, but he's the leader of the leading party. I mean, he's come out stating not just the Constitution, but an Archbishop's interpretation of the Constitution. And he's come out saying, Poles, you need to protect the churches. And and this is really interesting when you compare it to Black Lives Matter, because it's a very similar narrative. So women are interrupting masses with their protests. They've spray painted cathedral walls, and it's a massive thing. So he's coming out, and the narrative is it's frighteningly similar to the narrative that comes out against Black Lives Matter, that these are thugs, that these are tearing apart your communities, you need to protect Poland, you need to protect the church, you need to protect America, you need to protect Christian values. Like, it's a very similar thing.
Yeah, not dissimilar to Ireland.
40
years ago.
Yeah, well, I think it's a little bit different to the journey we're on. I mean, where it relates to us is that we have, I don't think there's anywhere else that's quite as similar as Poland to Irish women, and we're so well set up from 2-3 years ago, being extremely linked to having abortion pills sent in. So we're kind of, all of our activist groups are still pretty much intact, so we're volunteering and trying to help. And obviously we have a huge Polish community here, so we really want to help. But I think for US people to be looking at it, it's really interesting, because if you look at the packing of the courts and the packing of the commission, you look at a right-wing government coming in and taking lead from Christian right groups, and this is what's happened, and this is how they've bypassed Parliament, and this is the result.
This is the big scare that I think America's sleepwalking through, is that, yes, he came in, I think, on the wave of, Americans being fed up of lobbying, the money-grabbing, business-focused American Parliament, or what it become. They brought a businessman. They just brought the wrong guy in. They needed somebody who was young. They need somebody who is fair. They instead bring this guy in who is the symptom. To try and fix the problem.
So when you say that, I'm not disagreeing. I'm genuinely curious. When you say they, who's they, and what's the at what end? For what end? So, like, you understand why Donald Trump came in, and you go, well, they just needed this, and I'm not disagreeing. I'm actually curious. So, what would have been good, or what would have been useful? Who should they have brought in, and why?
Well, I think this dates back to it probably dates back further than Reagan, but like, if you want to lie in the sand, a Republican leader, Reagan, smashed unions, broke down American industries in favour of the people who were running them versus the people who were working for them. So the American worker has experienced a decline, a bit like the North of England worker.
Well, like, Reagan was completely based on Thatcher. He was too stupid.
No, the two of them were in cahoots together.
Well, he just copied Thatcher because he was too thick to hold his own shit.
He wasn't too thick because he had a whole bunch of people behind him pulling his strings. Okay, so the American Thatcher, Reagan, neoliberalism.
Well, they had a Thatcherite phase
built based on, in America, I think it was the air traffic controllers, and in Britain it was the miners. So we're going to decimate protections around people who have jobs. That's been going on for years. Yes, Obama came in and probably fixed the hospital pass he was given when the economy collapsed. When he first came in, he hands over a reasonably forward-looking country.
Well, America still had a lot of problems.
But Donald Trump didn't cause all this. So the point I'm trying to make is, they need somebody to come in and go, it's not all about big business or lobbying or special interest groups who can spend billions on the internet. Or
I know, and I get that, but there are so many different theys. So it's not me kind of going, well, who's they?
The American people.
No, I know, it's
What's
not me
good
going,
for the
who's
worker,
they?
The blue collar worker.
But I don't think everybody wants the same thing. So I'm kind of going, who would it be good for?
The majority of Americans.
Yeah.
Okay? It's a democracy. So you've basically got massive growing inequality over 30 years. A third of all Americans are almost below the poverty line, or near it, a couple of missed paychecks away from it. That's 100 million people. Now, there are lots of people making money as ever, and it's still very innovative, and it's still got all these great things going for it, but the body politic is rancid.
But like, you look at it from a European perspective and like an Irish perspective, and we're all going like, all of the people who are so badly hurt by this US Thatcherite system that has gone on and flourished, and this neoliberalism and this just disgusting capitalism. And it's like the miners or the Ford car workers, and like, you know, that element of America that's been crushed. You do understand you needed a Bernie, yeah? But he's it's the wrong shade of what you've been sold.
It's a bit like here, okay? Sinn Féin nearly broke into government by crushing the old Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael. Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael are not dissimilar to Democrat and Republican.
However, what happened here was the reason Sinn Féin didn't get it was because they didn't have enough candidates. Had they put forward all the candidates, it's not might. They absolutely would have.
And that to me would be very dangerous, because I think that they're unqualified to
go
into power on their own. So that's what happens, and that's where Peter Casey gets votes, and that's what happens. People come in and they just rile against things in a wolf whistly racist kind of way.
Well, populism, like if you think the word populism, it's based on popularity. So populism doesn't necessarily automatically mean that the person is completely unqualified and terrible and bad.
Right.
Generally speaking, what we find is, I mean, we've kind of attributed to the word popular. Like if I say populism, you go, or a populist, you go, oh shit, like, it's not good pictures. But if you think of what populism actually is, you go, right. So had we tapped into that in a responsible sort of way, that might have been useful.
Well, it's anti-globalist, it's anti-immigration, it's lock up the country and wave the flag, it's nationalistic.
No. It tends to be, and that's why when we hear the word populism, that's what we think. But it's not actually necessarily at core that. Of course, that's what fucking happens, but it's not necessarily that.
Well, I mean, there's also democratic socialism, which is a different thing as well, which is a far more palatable for me anyway. But this is the thing, someone said the Brazilification of America is happening right now. And if Donald Trump gets elected next week, I will despair. I mean, I think it is the worst. I mean, I would literally worry for the world's future. I'd worry forget about, he doesn't give a shit about the climate, right? So that's going back steps. I worry about nuclear war. I worry about lots of...
Look, a lot of us panicked, and then a lot of us went, it can't be that bad, but get rid of him. He's not going to last that long. I know this is ridiculous. Fuck it, go. At this point, the whole world's at a shaky here. We're just going, okay, once we'll forgive, but twice we're kind of going, the world... I don't think the world can cope with the news, which I think to an extent, I think is awful. I think to an extent it's kind of a little bit hyperbolic, but it's how we all feel. And, like, my kids would hear me going about politics, but they're kids, they don't give a shit. But what I notice is their friends, in their houses, politics is never discussed. Their friends are fuckwits. They don't know. They don't fucking know. And I'm sitting there going, all the children of Ireland want next week, by the way, they all know it's an election, and they don't understand American politics. They don't even fucking know who the Taoiseach is this month in Ireland. But all the children of the world want is for the Cheeto to lose his job. And what I would, like, I presume panto isn't a thing in America, and I'm not sure if they would grasp that. So in Ireland, and I know in the UK, we have this thing called pantomime, which is, like, they'll do fairy tales like Cinderella or whatever at Christmas time, Snow White, and there's a such thing as a panto dame, and then there's always going to be a baddie, which might be the stepmother. It's a weird fucking thing. You have to look at it. If you don't get it, it's a weird thing. But every child gets brought, even if you're poor, most kids get brought to the panto at Christmas. It's a fucking big deal. It's the highlight of your year. You'll have the panto dame, which is essentially a drag queen, going, where is he? And the children will go, he's behind you! The baddie's behind you! And no child is going to the panto this year. They've had a fucking shit year. Halloween is cancelled. Their birthday parties, everything has been cancelled. It's been a shit year. And all the kiddies want is for Donald Trump, who is the baddie of the pantomime, to lose his fucking job. So listen, if you don't know what to do, if you think Biden's bad, just the children of the world, certainly the children of Ireland, are asking you, could you please just make their Christmas and get rid of the pantomime baddie and just vote for Biden? The kids have been through enough.
Let's hope that happens. I'm going to leave you with something from, I think, about 1993. It's one of my favourite bits. It's by the wonderful Bill Hicks. And just think how all of what he says applies today more than ever before you go and vote if you're voting in America.
Is there a point to my act? I would say there is. I have to. The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and when you choose to go on it, you think it's real, because that's how powerful our minds are. And the ride goes up and down and round and round. It has thrills and chills, and it's very brightly colored, and it's very loud, and it's fun for a while. Some people have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real, or is this just a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us, and they say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid, ever, because this is just a ride. And we kill those people. Shut him up. We have a lot invested in this ride. Shut him up. Look at my furrows of worry. Look at my big bank account and my family. This has to be real. It's just a ride. But we always kill those good guys who try and tell us that. You ever notice that? And let the demons run amok? But it doesn't matter because it's just a ride. And we can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice. No effort, no work, no job, no savings of money. A choice right now between fear and love. The eyes of fear want you to put bigger locks on your door, buy guns, close yourself off. The eyes of love instead see all of us as one. Here's what we can do to change the world right now to a better ride. Take all that money we spend on weapons and defense each year and instead spend it feeding, clothing, and educating the poor of the world, which it would many times over, not one human being excluded, and we can explore space together, both inner and outer, forever in peace.